doing great. And then you have an assistant manager who's learned about half the stuff. It's not honestly that complicated, especially if you have all the systems and documents and everything and videos and all this stuff. It might be another 4 months or 6 months. If you had an assistant manager for 6 months, it's pretty realistic if you find a quality person, they have the right character and the ability to absorb and do this kind of stuff, that they could be 2 full-time managers. You could promote that second person, and now you have 2 full-time managers on salary. You can provide benefits if you like, to however you want to set that up. But ultimately, this is the situation we've been running for about 1.5 years. And this is my favorite. It does cost me a little bit more, but I am happy to pay an extra 30 or 60 grand above the 1 or 1.5 manager system to ultimately have the best care, because the best care means higher pricing. And that's just realistic in this industry. Once you've been running it for a year or two, you're going to see that all these big smelly facilities nearby have the worst reputations, and they will lose residents out the back door so fast. If you can be known as the best care in your area, man, the amount of people knocking on your door, the amount of people wanting to move in, it's just going to be, I mean, for us, it's like 3 a week. We can't compete with filling those beds. So I'm able to increase my bed prices. I'm able to give higher wages to my caregiver staff, to my chef, right? It ultimately puts more income in the business, and it puts more expenses on the business because I'm paying the best people, but really my income can be accelerated more than my staffing expenses, and it still gets me to a very, very profitable place and a more and more stable place where I'm able to take long trips. I'm able to really, I mean, heck, I say I work 2 to 4 hours a week. I don't even know if I work that. Honestly, Laura probably works 2 to 4 hours a week. I'm probably at 0, honestly, now for Platinum. I just go in, I do some tours, and I do some events, right? Like go for Easter and stuff and Christmas and hang out with grandmas. When my actual grandma was there, I would visit more. Now that she's passed, like, it's a little bit different. So this is my end result. I would suggest that this is your year 2 play for you all as you are looking at doing this. How do you get to 2 full-time people on it? So you can look at the budgeting on it on the Performa and say, okay, if we had 2 people at 60 or 65, or perhaps it's 1 person at 80 and 1 person at 50, or maybe it's 1 person at 65 and then you have the 1.5 and you bumped it up an extra caregiver on there at $25 an hour, $22 an hour. You can look at what these numbers are, but also keep in mind, when you get to that place, you will probably have raised rents. You'll probably be an extra $250 more per month from that perspective. And so you'll actually probably be netting higher than if you just added those expenses in without adding the additional income in. So for your caregivers, for your 2 managers, my best caregivers become my best managers. I realistically do not think that this job is complicated. It's not easy, it's just not complicated. So if you have people with character and heart, that will be your best people. They will become your best managers. And honestly, the whole thing is, how do we love people the best? And it's easy to say if it's 40 hours a week, right? If you're closed on Sunday, if you're not working nights. But how do you love people consistently on a 24-hour-a-day business, 365? That takes a lot of patience. That takes a lot of character. You need people with this amazing character and grit to be able to do these things, to be able to come in the middle of the night, to be able to, even lead your team, right? To fire some of these caregivers that have bad attitudes and are just not treating your grandmas correctly. But a lot of these things, as far as technical things, you can train. It's very much on-the-job training. So if you said, hey, you know what? I felt like we hired this manager at the beginning with this big box experience, and you got, 6 months or a year into this, and they're just not your person, right? They're good. They get the tasks done, but they're not like culture that you want. They don't have the heart that you want. I would for sure hire that second manager, that assistant, and then start to move them up. And when the opportunity arises, you just replace them, because I think that the character of who you are bringing up is the most important. I would put that higher than experience or skill set, because it doesn't take very long to learn the tasks here. I mean, realistically, if you hired a caregiver and they had on the floor experience, they knew what it was like running the routine, right? What it's like doing the day-to-day work. And they had the character, the experience to be able to lead, or perhaps you develop those kind of leadership skills, you develop those communication skills, and that's honestly what we're doing. We're paying for leadership training for our two managers, because they can do the work. Fantastic. Now it's, how do you teach them how to lead people to do the work, right? How do you teach them to motivate people to be effective? How do you teach them to discipline people? It's easy to find caregivers and have them run the show. It is more difficult to teach them to teach other people to do their job, right? I think that's where a lot of our year 2 training comes in for managers. Year 1 is solidifying the systems. Here's how you run it in great detail and become an expert at that. We spent all of last year focusing on that. Now this year we are specifically building leadership skills, building communication skills into our managers who really, they didn't have managerial positions before. So I would say that you can definitely go from that perspective, and I have done it and have amazing results with it. But consider who you have for these two things, right? And I guess there has to be two parts to this. They have to be able to do the day-to-day work, and then they have to be able to lead the other staff to do the day-to-day work. And ultimately, I would say that this is a pretty smooth transition, or it can be. I mean, obviously, sometimes you have to fire people and you should have to you may need to step up for a couple weeks or so, but you can have, your quality caregivers step up and cover a lot of that kind of stuff. So I guess to kind of recap here, right? Here is that system, that flow from one manager with experience so that you have that 6 months to learn it, then promoting that quality caregiver. And perhaps that is another about 6 months where you have a 1.5 manager system. If your goal is to race to 2 managers, then probably somewhere in that 9 to 12 months, you can promote that second full-time manager and have a full 2 manager system, and really spend the time at that point where you as the owner are solely building your team. You're working on the business. You're not in the day-to-day. And that realistically might be 20 hours a week for maybe all of year 2. And then perhaps from there, it's a day a week or so as you get further into that journey.